Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the 33rd installment of my Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links Best Deck series. Today I'm going to be showing you a deck based entirely around the 6 Samurai. If you like the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and let's get into it. Alright, so the best character for this deck is Joey Wheeler with the skill Field of the Warriors. This allows you to begin the duel with the field spell Sojin activated. What this does is it increases the attack and defense of all beast and warrior type monsters by 200 points. So the main reason I think this is the best skill we'll ever Slink like restart is mostly because each of the 6 Samurai cards are kind of understated because they have an ability that's pretty powerful on each of them. So they are understated in attack and defense wise. So most of them will end up having around 1700 to 1500 attack. So when you got this on the board, it kind of buffs them up so they're on par with other decks currently being played. So they kind of compete. If you don't use this skill, you'll find quite a lot of the time you'll be having to use all your defensive spells and traps really early on because you simply cannot compete with other monsters being played on the board because each of them will always be stronger than yours, so you're always going to have to try and defend your monsters rather than leaving them to defend themselves. Although considering this deck is kind of combo orientated, Restart is also a perfectly fine skill for this deck as it allows you to get a perfect starting hand so you can combo off more often. Alright, now I'm going to go through the deck list. Just before I start, I'm sorry for my pronunciation, I'm pretty bad with names. This deck contains 2 Great Shogun Shien, 1 Enishi Shine's Chancellor, 2 the 6 Samurai Zanji, 3 Hand of the 6 Samurai, 2 the 6 Samurai Yaichi, 1 Half Shot, 3 Enemy Controller, 2 Powerful Rebirth, 1 Impenetrable Attack, and 3 Copy Knight. So the only thing I really want to talk about with the deck list itself is the 3 one-of cards, simply because I want to say why you'd run one-ofs of these cards. First of all, there's Enishi Shine's Chancellor. This is a comeback card. Basically, it can only be used once your 6 Samurai monsters are in your graveyard. So if you don't have monsters in your graveyard, it is practically worthless. So having this in your normal hand, unless you're currently really far behind, is pretty bad. So that's why there's only one of him, because you want to draw him later on in the game when you need him the most. The other 2 one-off cards, Half Shot and Impenetrable Attack, are basically the exact same card in how they are used most of the time. The reason there are 2 of them, and they're a bit different, is because it's easier to cover more scenarios if you have one of each. I will talk about later on why specifically Half Shot when I go through each of the cards. Alright, so the strategy of this deck is fairly simple. Basically, you just want to get your Great Shogun Shiens out on the board. What Great Shogun Shien does is, if you control 2 6 Samurai monsters, you can special summon him from your hand without tributing. Once Great Shogun Shien's out on the board, it means your opponent is only able to activate 1 spell or trap card a turn. This includes things like ritual spells, or just him trying to activate defensive spells or traps. So it's a really powerful effect. Plus, whenever he is destroyed, you could just destroy another 6 Samurai monster in his place. So there are 3 different ways you can get Shogun Shien out on the board. First, you just play 2 6 Samurai monsters by normal summoning them, and then you can just special summon him. The second is you play a 6 Samurai monster, activate Copy Knight, there's your 2 6 Samurai monsters, and you can summon Shogun Shien. The third is you play a 6 Samurai monster, activate Powerful Rebirth, bring a 6 Samurai monster back from the graveyard that has died this game, put it on the board, there's your 2 6 Samurai monsters, and you can summon him. So obviously there's a bit more to this deck than just the combo itself, as each of the cards have their own specific effects. So basically I'll go through each of them. The 6 Samurai Zanji, he is a really powerful card against decks that have high level attack monsters that you really need to get rid of. Because as long as you've got a 6 Samurai Zanji on the board, if you control another face-up 6 Samurai monster with a different name, you can attack with him, and he will destroy any monster he does battle with. Plus, he also has the added effect of, if he is destroyed, you can target another 6 Samurai monster and destroy that instead. The 6 Samurai Yaichi, his effect allows you to destroy 1 set spell or trap card. Basically, it's going to use this to destroy your opponent's backline and make it easier to be able to attack your opponent and also summon monsters without them having like a floodgate or something. The only downside to his effect is he cannot attack the turn he uses his ability. And the last level 4 monster, Hand of the 6 Samurai. This card wins games by itself. It's really powerful. This is the card I underestimated the most. I think going into this set, this card is actually really strong and nearly makes this deck viable as like a competitive deck. What this Hand of Six Samurai does is it allows you to tribute one monster, one Six Samurai monster, and destroy one monster your opponent controls. This can be used multiple times a turn, and it is really good as it combos off using Copy Knight. If you don't know what Copy Knight does, basically, if you summon a level 4 or lower monster, you can activate it. It will then create a clone, a token of the same monster that will be 0 attack, 0 defense with no effect. It will basically just have the exact same name. Why this is useful is, once you summon a Hand of the Six Samurai for example, it will then summon another copy of a Hand of the Six Samurai. So therefore you can activate your Hand of the Six Samurai's effect and use that card as your tribute to destroy your opponent's stuff. Also, because it has Six Samurai in its name, it can be used to summon your Great Shogun Shien. Keep in mind, the Copy Knight only works really well with Hand of the Six Samurai, and it will not work with Zanji and Yaichi, as both of these require a card with a different card name to activate their effects. Alright, so I've already gone over Great Shogun Shien earlier on in the video, so I'm not really going to talk about him. I'll just skip over him and go straight to Enishi's Shien's Chancellor. What Enishi Shien's Chancellor does is, if you have 2 Six Samurai monsters in your graveyard, you could special summon in from your hand by banishing them. So basically you can only use this when you are really far behind, as most of the time you won't have your Six Samurai monsters in your graveyard, thanks to things like Impenetrable Attack, Half Shut, and Powerful Rebirth, which I'll talk about a bit later on. Enishi Shien's Chancellor is pretty powerful and is really good at trying to come back, as its effect is you target one monster on the board and you destroy it. Simple as that. So he's really powerful. He's got a really good stat line and has a really strong effect. So it's basically the ideal comeback card if you are behind. The only real downsides to him are, if you draw him before you have 2 Six Samurai monsters in the graveyard, so if you have him like your starting hand, you're just really never going to get to use him. He's going to be pretty useless. And secondly, he cannot use, once he's used effect, he cannot attack during that turn. Alright, so I've already gone over Copy Knight, so I'm going to skip that and go straight over to Powerful Rebirth. What Powerful Rebirth does is it allows you to target one level 4 monster or lower in your graveyard and special summon it to the board. Its level is increased by 1, and its attack is increased by 100, and its defense is also increased by 100. So the reason this card's in the deck is pretty self-explanatory. Each of the Six Samurai monsters requires you to have another Six Samurai monster with them to be able to use their effect, whether this be trying to summon your Great Shogun Shien by having 2 monsters, or trying to use your Zanji, which requires another Six Samurai monster with a different name, or your Yaichi, which does the same effect, or your Hand of the Six Samurai, which requires, yet again, another Six Samurai monster. The only real downside to using this card is it can then make it a bit harder to try and use Shien's Chancellor, but that is the only real downside. Alright, so the next 2 cards, like I said earlier, Impenetrable Attack and Half Shot, are basically in the deck to perform the exact same thing. As all your Six Samurai monsters require you to have another Six Samurai monster on the board for them to activate their effects, it is really important that you keep your Six Samurai monsters alive, especially on like turn 1, when you can't activate your trap cards because you play them and they're set, so you have to wait a turn to use them. So a lot of the time you want to play a Six Samurai monster, then play a Half Shot or an Impenetrable Attack, so that guarantees them to be alive during your next turn, because your opponent will swing at them to try and destroy them, and you can just activate an Impenetrable Attack, which will either take no battle damage, or you can target one monster on the board and make it so that it's not able to be destroyed by card effect or by battle during that battle phase. Or you can activate Half Shot, which targets one face-up monster in the field, halves its attack, but does not allow it to be destroyed during the battle phase. So the reason I have 1 Impenetrable Attack and 1 Half Shot in the deck as opposed to just 2 Impenetrable Attacks, because Impenetrable Attack is, in my opinion, a better card, as basically it's better for multiple situations as it has multiple effects, and it also stops cards dying to card effects, as opposed to Half Shot, which just stops them dying by battle. But the reason I have a Half Shot in the deck is because it counters one specific card. So if you played Duel Links recently, you'll notice there's one really popular card currently being used, as it's basically a cheaper version of Mirror Wall, and is probably more powerful than Mirror Wall in a lot of ways. It is called Wall of Disruption. So when you attack, your opponent activates the trap card. It reduces all of your face-up attack position monsters by 800 attack for each monster you control. So basically it will reduce your monster's attack to 0 if you have 3 of them, or just reduce it by like 800 or 1600. Really powerful card and is used really often. What Half Shot does is it halves your monster's attack until the end of the turn. So at the end of the turn, it will revert your monster's attack back to full again. So I'm not sure if it's meant to do that or if that's an intended interaction, but basically when you swing with a monster and he reverts it down to 0, you can then activate Half Shot on it, keep the monster alive, and also revert your attack back to normal at the end of the turn. So if you keep seeing a lot of that card being played when you're trying to play this deck, just run another Half Shot instead of the Impenetrable Attack. And the final card in this deck is the famed Enemy Controller. Basically this card is in every single deck in Duel Links at the moment. It counters Cyber Angels, it's extremely versatile. You can use it for 2 main effects. When your opponent swings at you, you activate it, change that monster defense position, therefore negating the attack. Or you can just tribute one of your monsters, take control of one of your opponent's monsters to activate its effect, or just attack your opponent and try to finish them off. It's a ton of reasons to use Enemy Controller, really powerful card. And it also has the added bonus in this deck of it's really good with Copy Knight, as you can just create a copy of one of your monsters, then just use that copy for the tribute to take control of one of your opponent's monsters. So really powerful card and has the added bonus of that in this deck. Alright guys, that's pretty much it for the talking part of this video. From now on there'll just be 3 or 4 different gameplays just showing this deck in action, showing basic combos and synergies, just showing you how the deck functions if you're a bit curious still. Thank you guys for watching, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff, and I hope to see you in the next one.